Welcome everyone to our Experiential Philanthropy 101 and Beyond, Using Giving to Teach in the College Classroom webinar. Hello, my name is Kaisa Larson. I'm the Faculty Coordinator for Student Philanthropy at Northern Kentucky University. Today we have a packed webinar. To start off, we're going to be giving an overview of philanthropy. We're going to be looking at the topic from different angles, including teaching, student perspectives, research. We're also going to hear from a nonprofit representative and also a funder. And before we get started, we're going to hear from Donna Mayerson of the Manuel D. and Rhoda Mayerson Foundation in Cincinnati, Ohio. Dr. Mayerson has supported NKU for 25 years, and she has a PhD in psychology with an interest in a branch of psychology that identifies and accentuates people's strengths. So without further ado, welcome Dr. Mayerson.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Hard to believe it's been 25 years. I guess 25 years ago, my husband met with Dr. Votruba because of his interest in civic engagement. We have a family foundation, and our foundation was interested in civic engagement, and we had a service learning program. And so when my husband met with Dr. Votruba, he explained what the service learning program was, and they discussed the importance of civic engagement and helping young people engage more in their communities. As NKU was a commuter school and kids were leaving the community, it was especially relevant to think of ways to engage kids in the nonprofits of this community. And so this program began 25 years ago with that in mind, to really help kids to engage in the nonprofits, local nonprofits, to be aware of the issues that were facing the community that were being addressed by the nonprofits. We initially funded that with the hopes that courses could be tailored to not only teach the content, but also somehow bring in the issues that communities were facing and nonprofits were facing. So it began with a few classes in which teachers were encouraged to think about how to talk about the social issues that the nonprofits were facing and ways that philanthropy could be used to support those nonprofits. It started with just a few classes. We were interested in cultivating the spirit of giving with young people, and we're really hopeful that that was the vehicle to do that. So as a funder, our interest was in having an impact on the nonprofit by giving them small grants and really inspiring kids to invest in the community, to be connected to the nonprofits, and really want to stay in this area to contribute to their community. So students were given opportunities to look at a number of nonprofits, and the classrooms that participated in the program grew and grew over time. We additionally gave some funding for some data to be collected to see that there was an impact on the students and on the nonprofits. What happened as a result of that is that more and more teachers and more classes that at first blush seemed maybe it would be difficult to connect to a nonprofit, we're finding really creative ways of doing that. And students were having really meaningful experiences looking at those nonprofits, understanding what the contributions were that they made to the community at large, and their connections with their instructors and each other seemed to deepen through that process. It's been many years and many classes now, and I've attended a number of ceremonies where the checks are given to the nonprofits, and I've been able to hear the students speak about what their experience has been like, and the instructors as well. And I've always been moved and sort of blown away by how deeply kids can connect to what the nonprofits are doing, how moved they are to do something on their own and to make a contribution to those nonprofits. An example is, this was a recent one, there's so many, but one recent one was in Japanese drama. And I listened to the teacher talk about how close she became to the students through the process of looking at these nonprofits, and just how they started to learn about poverty and racism that was true here locally and also in Japan, so sort of a global look at that. And as a result of their experience and the meaning that they sort of gleaned through that, their compassion grew also. So really just find this to be very important, and really hope that this is a vehicle for young people to launch themselves into ways of giving, whether it be through time, talent, or treasure, and contribute to the greater good of the community.
Thank you so much again, Dr. Mayerson. A couple of things that I wanted to clarify. Dr. Votruba was NKU's president at the time that the Mayerson Project was established. And every semester we always have an awards ceremony to celebrate the classes that have taught with the Mayerson Project. So you'll hear more about that a little bit later in our program. But I'd like to just say that this collaboration between the Mayerson Foundation, the Mayersons, and Dr. Votruba has been absolutely fundamental. The family has been invaluable, and when so much so that when you walk around campus and you say, "I teach with Mayerson," everyone knows what that means. And on behalf of all the faculty who have taught with Mayerson in the past, we're just so grateful. So I hope we're going to be featuring the Mayerson Project in our discussion today, in our overview of student philanthropy. And to start out, I have one important announcement, not at all related to the webinar, but important, that at 11:55 a.m., we are going to have a fire alarm campus-wide that will last 1 minute. And I wanted to reassure everybody who is not on the NKU campus that we are safe. And so if you hear this alarm going off at 11:55, it is a scheduled test, and we are just going to be taking a break at that time so we don't have to listen to the fire alarm. All right, so to get started with this webinar, I'm going to be offering a little bit of an overview of student philanthropy. What is it? How does it work? What does a class look like? And later, we're going to have a deeper dive with faculty, researchers, and students. So I'd like to start with a question. What is student philanthropy, or experiential philanthropy? At some universities, student philanthropy is mistaken for student involvement in fundraising efforts. Here at NKU, we are talking about not that, but rather the power of giving. And the power of giving specifically to teach course content along with stewardship and citizenship. We have a designated pathway for a basic class. Donors give money, sometimes with investment stipulations, or with stipulations that the money be invested in a certain cause. Professors integrate the project in a way that deepens course content and student learning outcomes. So this is not an add-on component. It's not something that we do in one day. It's something that we do over a semester. To give you an example, I'm a Spanish professor here at NKU, and I've taught with the Mayerson Project in my class several times. One of my favorite classes that I've taught with the philanthropy component is a film class where we watched films specifically from Spain. In designing the class, I selected 4 demographics: women, immigrants, adolescents, and people with disabilities, and I chose films about those social groups. In my class, I had students think about social needs related to those demographics and compile a list of nonprofits in our area that serviced those demographics. And throughout the course, we used the local component along with class content to reflect upon the real-life social needs that we're seeing in our area with how they're represented through fiction film in Spain. And together we kind of got a global perspective about some of these needs. Students gave presentations. They chose one nonprofit, they did a site visit, and they were the advocates for that nonprofit. And each group gave a presentation about their nonprofit to educate the rest of the class about it. And then all the students voted to collectively decide where to invest. And the written assignments, they prepared reflections, not only about the course content, but also about the community engagement project. So the synthesis of those two components were very important in my class. And then lastly, the opportunity to celebrate is also fundamental. And you'll see this in our next slide with the pillars of service learning. Celebration is an important end point to the pillars of service learning. And we always have an awards ceremony, which Dr. Mayerson mentioned earlier in her remarks. So the awards ceremony takes place in the second to last week of the semester, and that's the time when all the classes get together to celebrate. So just to recap, the Mayerson classes in our student philanthropy project, we encourage, or actually require, all faculty to incorporate the principles of service learning. And there are multiple definitions and rubrics, but this visual kind of gives you an example of the structure that we use. And it's really important that we design classes to complement the content and give our professors the flexibility to do it differently, and to allow, with the end goal, most important in addition to celebrating, but the end goal that students reflect on the real world problems and how it relates to what they're learning in class. And student philanthropy can be used in many disciplines. Here at NKU, why our program is so special is because we have incorporated successfully student philanthropy in over 45 disciplines, and you can see them listed on this visual. We have classes both at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level. We have 100 level classes as well as 300 level classes for undergraduates. So we teach for freshmen and all the way up to seniors in those classes. The incorporation of student philanthropy takes planning and also, most importantly, some creative thinking. And some universities nationally have incorporated or have used our model to introduce their own philanthropy programs. And I'd just like to mention that some universities with a religious affiliation, for instance, this philanthropy project is good for religion or religious ethics studies. Now, as part of my presentation, I'd like to give you 3 short examples of classes that we have had on campus that have incorporated the philanthropy component. The first example that I'd like to give is the class English 101 College Writing, taught by Dr. Jonathan Kullick, an English professor here at NKU. I picked this class because it is one that's usually required at NKU, and I think that's important to mention. And Dr. Kullick will expand on comments that later during another panel, but I'll just briefly mention that for this class, students write about their experience with philanthropy as a main component, and he'll be able to explain to us more about that. This class invested in a children's home, DCCH, Center for Children and Families, and I'd like to share a quote that we got from one of our students who responded to a post survey that we give to all of our classes. And every semester, we survey students at the beginning and also at the end. You'll be hearing more about references to our surveys, but this is the one that somebody contributed at the end of the semester about their investment. And I quote, "Children need a voice. We are allowing so many more children to be heard, helped, and relieved of the emotional and physical pain they receive from men and women in their home and community that take advantage and harm them," end quote. My second example is a class that gave both money and talent, time and treasure. It's also one of the newer disciplines that we've incorporated student philanthropy in, and this class, the Visual Communication Design class, taught by Professor Hans Schellhaas, did design work for several nonprofits, or I guess I should clarify, the students in the class did the design work for several nonprofits, and this tied directly with what they were learning in the classroom. And they chose one client to receive a $2,000 grant, and they also applied visual design skills in addition to giving money to this particular nonprofit. So the nonprofit that this class chose to get money, but also deliverables from the students, was the Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky. The Emergency Shelter of Northern Kentucky started out in a smaller space, but demand grew so much so that they needed to move into a larger space. And the visual communication design students were able to provide the nonprofit with directional signs for the clients. And we just got notice maybe a week ago that they're actually still in use. So that makes us very happy. And the feedback from the nonprofit was amazing. They said that the students were able to see the space, the new space, in a way that the nonprofit could not. And that, to give you an example of what that means, is, for instance, students looked at the hallways and they gave them different names, kind of like you would with a street sign. So those that were in the emergency shelter knew what spaces were allowed or what ones were off limits during certain hours of the day. So this has been a pretty big game changer for the staff working at the emergency shelter. And it also opened up the opportunity for collaboration. And we see this often in our student philanthropy classes. Sometimes one class will select a nonprofit, and then we'll see them working with another class again at a different time, or sometimes at the same time. So the emergency shelter not only collaborated with the visual communication design class, but also worked with a public relations class. The last example that I have is a class taught by Dr. Megan Downing. And Dr. Downing will be speaking later about research. She teaches in organizational leadership, but also in the Honors College. And this particular class with the student philanthropy component was service leadership and civic engagement. And what's unique about this class is that the professor pre-selected the nonprofit to partner with this class. So this is an example of a course design model where the professor felt that it was best to pre-identify the nonprofit. And students still were able to research, reflect, and figure out where to invest. And so they researched programs within the organization. And so there was still discussion and reflection. Students still had to be advocates for social needs, but they were doing so with one nonprofit instead of several. The class incorporated guest speakers from the field, and they came to class to talk to the students, in addition to reading about leadership in a textbook. You'll be hearing more about their award recipient, Be Concerned, later in our webinar. A representative from Be Concerned will be there. Will be here with us, but I'd like to share two student quotes from this class. One student said, and I quote, "Reviewing this grant helped me understand what it takes to run a nonprofit even more than the past guest speakers. Reviewing the nonprofit overhead, the amount of food served, and other expenses was mind-boggling to see just how many people these seemingly small organizations serve." And I guess I should clarify that Be Concerned has a food pantry. The second quote is, "This class taught me, above all, perspective. It taught me to be more understanding of where I am and how to adequately serve my community with my standing as a person. I've always thought that the difference I can make in the world is relatively small. This class taught me to understand the true impact of even a single community servant and what it takes to truly give your heart to a community. It also taught me that it's okay to be helped by that same community." To sum it up, why should professors teach with experiential philanthropy? Because it works, and we have data to show that. We're going to be having 4 researchers that will be presenting later, but here is a sneak peek about the positive impact that this program has on students' civic attitudes and also behaviors. So we can see an increase in civic engagement attitudes, an increase in behaviors. We can see changes related to philanthropic giving, and also changes in their feelings about being responsible and involved in their community. We have worked really hard to publish a handbook about what we've learned at NKU teaching with this model and teaching with philanthropy. It's intended as a how-to guide, not just for faculty on our campus, but nationally and internationally, and we would love to share it with you. If you'd like a free print copy of the handbook, you'll see our email address to get in touch, and we can mail that to you immediately. But we also have some other resources available right now if you want to take a look. We have a link to a resource page, and there you'll also find the handbook in a downloadable PDF version, so you can take a look at it and start reading it now. All right, and that sums up my overview. And next on our agenda is some breakout rooms. So we are going to be taking 15 minutes to break out, and then we're going to come back and continue with our webinar. So in the breakout rooms, we'd like everybody to introduce yourself and answer the question, do you teach with philanthropy or do you want to? And what do you hope to learn? And I'd just like to remind everybody again of our looming fire alarm at 11:55 today. And we are safe. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you had a good breakout session and you made some good connections. Next, we will have a 45-minute faculty panel about teaching with philanthropy. Each of our 4 panelists will answer the question, why do you teach and how do you add student philanthropy? What is the value of this addition? And please put the questions for our panel in the chat.
Hello, welcome. I'd like to start out by introducing the panelists. So to my left, we have Dr. Jonathan Kollick, who is an English professor. He is a teacher educator who specializes in English secondary education. He teaches courses in the methods of teaching high school writing, literature in middle grades, young adult literature, as well as advanced grammar, and he was once a middle school language arts teacher himself. His teaching and research interests include composition theory and pedagogy, English education, American literature and literature of the American South, and the Bible as literature. He has published multiple books and numerous journal articles in these areas, and I think it's worth also mentioning that he's won some pretty prestigious teaching awards. So in 2019, he received the College Teacher of the Year Award from the Kentucky Council of Teachers of English Language Arts. And in 2022, he was our very own recipient of the Frank Senton Milburn Award for Outstanding Professor at NKU. So please welcome Jonathan Colick.
Thank you.
We also have with us today Dr. Reiko Ozaki, who's a social work professor. Dr. Ozaki's teaching, research, and practice interests are all focused on gender-based violence, particularly intimate partner violence, as well as mental health, anti-oppression, and refugee immigrant communities. Dr. Ozaki is actively involved in both the local and international community to bring resources and support to often underserved populations. For instance, Dr. Ozaki actively works with the local community to create a community of support for refugees and immigrants in the Northern Kentucky region. And she was also part of a collaboration of social workers from the United States who worked with social workers from Japan to create a system of support for domestic violence victim advocates in Japan. Please welcome Dr. Ozaki. We also have with us today Dr. Whitney Darnell, who's a communication professor. Dr. Darnell's research focuses on understanding and improving the conversations people have about their health and wellness in everyday health contexts, such as patient-provider interactions, organizational settings, and as caregivers and health advocates for others. Her work has appeared in academic journals such as Health Communication, Qualitative Health Research, and the Journal of International Research in Higher Education. And I found a quote from one of her students who took a class with her where Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project was implemented. They thought really did a nice job of showing how she implements this in her class and how students are bringing this out into the real world. The quote is, "Perhaps one of the biggest lessons I learned from this course was that there are numerous factors that can influence an individual's health that are uncontrollable by that individual. Learning about the social determinants of health and the concept of health disparities greatly changed my perspective on how to evaluate a patient's situation, and the knowledge I gained from that lesson will stick with me throughout my whole career." So kudos to you. It's awesome. And my name is Dr. Danielle McDonald. I am a criminal justice professor here on campus, and I was also an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. I've had the opportunity to teach with the Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project since I first started here about 15 years ago. And I also had the opportunity to be the faculty director for 3 years, and I've been able to research and publish in this area as well. So really excited to have this panel together to talk to you about the different ways that we implement it. And what I would like to do is start out with a particular question and have everybody go through and answer this. And then if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we'll get to those as well. So this question is really 2 parts, and I'd like each of you to take a stab at it. So how do you incorporate student philanthropy into your course? And can you explain why it is important to you that your students have the opportunity to participate in the Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project? Would you like to go first, Dr. Carter?
Sure, I'll be glad to. Well, first, I like the way you asked the question when you asked, how do we incorporate philanthropy into the courses that we teach? Because I don't think of philanthropy as an add-on or an add-in to the course. I think of it integrating with the content of the course. So the course that I've been using with the Philanthropy Project, and I've been teaching philanthropy now for about 15, 20 years. There was a period when I was chairing the department, I had to stop out for about 4 years. But the course is English 101, which is college writing. This is the required first-year writing course that most universities require. So I find it works very, very well with English 101 because it's a pretty foundational assumption that in a writing course, students need to have something to write about. And having them write about something that they deeply care about is, let's say, maybe 80% of the battle, like trying to get them to really be invested in their own writing skills. So you give them something interesting to write about, and that a lot more will take care of itself after that. So the way that I structure the writing course with philanthropy is really just to start with the student learning outcomes of the writing course and then go from there. So in all first-year writing courses, students generally will start with some sort of personal narrative. We generally do that because they're just like sometimes 90 days out of high school. Sometimes they're still in high school if they're in the high school program. And so we're trying to acclimate them to the university writing for a professor for the first time. And then after that, we gradually get them into using sources and then into persuasive writing. So the way that I integrate philanthropy is we begin the semester with, you could call it sort of getting in the mood of service. We do a project in acts, like random acts of kindness, personal acts of service. This is actually an idea that I got from attending a teaching workshop that the Scripps Howard Center offered faculty a number of years ago. And Catherine Berger Kay was the service learning expert who was brought in for that. So we do personal acts of kindness, and that then is what we write about. And in fact, my classes right now are working on those narratives, and they're learning to do all kinds of things. For example, I have them take photographs of the service they're doing, and they're learning how to incorporate the photography into their writing and how to format it and make it look nice. And they're also learning about the ethics of photography, because we're doing personal service. You can't take a picture of a vulnerable person or someone who's not able to consent. And so I think it's very important to blend in lessons about the ethics of good writing into a writing course, which, by the way, is going to get to the why I teach with philanthropy. So I'll talk about that in a moment. So from there, we will do what's called a nonprofit pitch assignment. So as a class, we all talk about topic areas that the students are interested in exploring. They get into groups, community boards, they explore nonprofits, and so they start writing pitches to each other. Interestingly, a couple of years ago, a student who was in the high school program suggested, some of us are not comfortable just pitching to each other. And so then we turned it into a writing assignment where they sit in the classroom on discussion boards writing to each other, and then that kind of gets everybody comfortable and they can start talking and sharing ideas. It all leads up to the students writing persuasively. So the students are studying all of the elements of good persuasive writing, but it's all in the context of advocating for their nonprofit organization. Mm-hmm. The audience for that paper is not only me, it's themselves, which kind of changes the kind of language that I allow them to use in the paper, because it can't all be very, very strictly academic, though mostly it is. But they have to think in terms of building a bridge to their audience, others in the classroom, appealing to the values of other students in the classroom, and always assuming the best about their audience, that their audience is a readership that is caring and sincere about the nonprofits they support. They just disagree. So it's a good lesson in persuasive writing. So the why. Why do I do all this, and why do I go to do this work? The extra work, actually, of teaching writing this way. The extra work pays me back. I mean, it's just so energizing. The students just take the course more seriously. I mean, the first day when I tell them what we're doing, and I kind of guide them into it through a writing activity, and then they realize, oh, this is real money. I mean, I can literally just sort of see them sitting up a little straighter. Again, I'm teaching 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and it's great to see the effect on them. What I want them to get out of the course ultimately is I want them to realize that writing is not just a private good, it's a public good, like education itself. It's not just for your own good, it's something that you can use to help others. So I hope that they will realize that, oh, well, writing is not only something that'll help me succeed in school and in my job, but I can use this to contribute to my community. And I'm very upfront with them and telling them this is what I'm hoping we're accomplishing here. I do hope that they will become aware of the nonprofit sector in terms of potential career choices. And finally, I do want them to become aware of writing as an ethical act. That I guess final thing I'll say at the moment, that there are a lot of bad examples of argument in the media, television, the internet that the students are exposed to. And I want them to be in a writing situation where you can't just yell at your audience. You have to assume the best of your audience, because actually your audience consists of good, well-meaning people who just disagree with you, and you have to establish a common connection with them. And so I love that as being kind of the ethical challenge of the writing course.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great example of teaching them advocacy skills, but also considering the ethical and moral dilemmas that also come along with it, and teaching not only first-year college students, but high school students, and a lot of times too, right? So
Exactly.
Starting it with that younger group.
Sure, and I'll just add the high school students really step up and even take leadership roles in the philanthropy course to the extent that sometimes in the ceremony, the award ceremony at the end of the semester, I'll have one or two high school presenters up on the stage, and as their professor, I'm just standing in back of them beaming with pride because I am really, really proud of them.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah. Dr. Izaki, would you like to go next?
Sure. I really love your stories and the class. I hope my students actually take your class before they come to my class. So I'm Reiko Ozaki, and I teach undergraduate social work students course titled Practice with Communities and Organizations. And they're not that young like your students, but they are a little bit youngish because they are undergraduate students. But in social work, it's interesting that there are a lot of people who come back to school after many years of life experiences. So sometimes I have students who are like 21, 20, even 19 maybe, if they are done with their early part of the undergraduate studies. And then I've had students who's in their 40s, 50s, and even 60s in undergraduate classes. So there's a lot of different population that I'm teaching. But one thing that is really true to the people who major in social work is that they want to help. They come in wanting to do something to change, what's happening in the society right now, but they don't know how. They have a lot of visions and dreams and hopes. That's kind of how they come in. So with the Mayerson project, I use it as a framework for them to learn about community and do something for the community. So with the way I designed my course, I came in with the agency partner agency that I have worked with before I started using Mayerson framework. And so my students are all social work majors, and they have some, willingness in doing something in the community, but we teach them how to assess community needs, how to identify strengths of the community and assets, and what social workers do to help that, the community. So, I'm using a refugee community in the region as a example for them to learn about working with community. So they learn to assess community needs by meeting with the agency representative. They work with the refugee immigrant community in the region. And then they also have an opportunity to meet with community members, refugee people themselves, and talk to them about their journey and how they are in our community right now. So they learn about the new community. Most of the students don't know anything about refugees when they come to my class. So they learn a lot about the community first. And then they dive a little bit deeper into learning about the needs of the community. So they kind of wear the social worker hat to start learning about what's going on, what social work can do, that kind of thing. And then what I do with the money that's given, the funding given by the Mayerson project, is to use it as a match. So the students can raise, organize a campaign, online fundraising campaign to raise funds. And then once they meet the certain threshold, then the funding is added as a match to their campaign. So they really get excited about creating a persuasive message and get the word out and advocate to meet the needs of the community, and then also see the money coming in. They ask their parents to pitch in, they ask their friends. I even had a student in the past who wrote to the governor of Kentucky and asked for funding. So I don't know if the money came from the governor's office, but there's a lot of creative juice that gets going for them, thinking that they are making a difference. So at the end of the semester, they also get to meet with the agency representative, the funding person, and other students who were part of the Mayerson project on campus toward the end of the semester. So I think I really like using the philanthropy component in my class. It really gives a good platform for their learning. They can learn a lot about funding or assessment and things of that nature by reading or my lecture. But I think having the actual hands-on component, it's really, really helpful. So I think it's been a really good addition, and I hope to continue to teach with Mayerson Project.
Yeah, it's really cool how you're able to use it with your mates. So it's a little different than what you were doing. You were doing it with people first coming in. You're doing it with students who've been there a minute and know this is what they want to do. And that's really nice how you've been able to apply the concepts you're learning in class, but then get them involved in the funding as well, right? So they take more ownership of that and get more excited about the money they're giving away because they've had such a part in raising it as well.
And I think one of the things I wanted to add, about social work students is that they want to do something. They think about like a clinical work, but then I always tell them, what about the money? How do you get the money to do that work? That work needs funding to do. So I think it's really important to teach the students about importance of having funding and community support to do the work that social workers do.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Dr. Darnell?
Yes, thank you. Again, my name is Dr. Whitney Darnell, and I incorporate Mayerson into my health communication class. It's an upper division class. Students in that class, if they're not health communication majors, I also get students from health sciences. I've had nursing students, kinesiology, I've had sociology, I think, before. So I have students that think they have some kind of interest in being in the healthcare field. And oftentimes they come in always thinking that healthcare means a clinical setting, a patient-provider setting. But one of the first lessons we learned in my class is that health communication, all of us do health communication every single day. If you ate breakfast and you told somebody about it, or you made that even internal decision, you're communicating with yourself or others about decisions you're making, about your life and well-being all the time. And of course, when you start talking about more vulnerable issues, if you are deaf or you have something else going on, you're communicating in all kinds of ways about that as well. And so for me, incorporating nonprofits is critical when I'm teaching these students, because when you really get into the lived experiences of some of these vulnerable populations, they don't actually spend every day and every night in those clinical settings. But the nonprofits play a huge role in providing health resources for a lot of people, whether that is food and trying to address food disparities, whether it is my students last semester worked with an organization that serves deaf children. My students this semester are working with a pharmacy that provides free prescriptions for people who are trying to get insulin and other really life-saving medical assistance, but they're not doctors, the nonprofits, but they are communicating with patients, having to reach them as a communication specialist, having to message and do a variety of things as in a different light that they are first responders to a lot of these needs. And no one ever really thinks about our nonprofits as part of health and healthcare. My class is a little bit unique because it is delivered in 7 weeks and an asynchronous platform. So I don't have the students in front of me, and I still have to complete all of the components that Mayerson requires. And so as you learned before, there has to be an element of choice where students are making decisions about how the ultimate funding will be used. And they have to, be able to integrate that into the course and be able to use our course principles in order to make those decisions. So the way I do that, because I don't have a lot of room for error, I don't have 16 weeks to get this done. I have 7 weeks to get this done. I still need them to be able to communicate, even though I don't have a designated time slot of 9 to 10 o'clock. So I do a little pre-work in front of my courses. So I choose a philanthropy for each semester that I teach this course. So as I said, this time I am working with an organization called Faith Community Pharmacy, and they provide free prescriptions for their clients and when they can reach them. But that particular philanthropy has 3 different initiatives that they're working on right now. So they have, for example, a food as medicine training that they're trying to get out into the community to teach people that have some different health things that they're working on, how they can use food to nourish themselves and maybe become less dependent on medications in some cases here and there. They have medical supply drive. They have 3 different things that they're talking to my class about. I then divide the group. I have 24 students in this class. I divide them into 4 different teams. And so what I do require and make upfront with them is they will be required to meet with their team. It can be virtual, but they will have to be present for a meeting with their team for one time. And each group has kind of a different component that they're working on. We're integrating discussion about health communication and the theories that can guide our decision making every single week through some of our other related assignments. They're quizzed on different things. That's all in the background. But in terms of the actual Mayerson work, Team 1, they contact the philanthropy and set up a time with the executive director to interview them about questions they have about each initiative. And they record that so that the rest of the class can be a part of. They self-select into these groups, so I am a little bit nice. I don't just force them into the week. So I'm like, which week works better for you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And they kind of self-select that way when they look at their schedules. The second group then takes that video and creates a rubric using our theories and our concepts from our text to decide this is how we're going to start comparing these different initiatives. And as health communicators, we are looking at how, what pamphlets they have, their website, what forms and channels of communication is the philanthropy using, and do we feel like these initiatives are positioned to be successful? And of course, that gives me a lot of room for them to, think about, they're not, a lot of times nonprofits don't have somebody that is specialized in this to do this work, and so they're doing the best they can with what they have. But we really get the opportunity to say, how could this be better? Every single choice that you make about a message, who is this even intended for? Why did they use this color? Was the word choice, was that really targeting who they should target? How might we improve it? And as they're discussing that, we're coming up with actual pieces of messaging that we can also send to the director to say, here's kind of some things that we played with looking at your ideas. The next team then kind of reviews that rubric and says, okay, what's missing? What do we still not know? I have a discussion board where people are all kind of collaborating. And then they do a follow-up with the nonprofit to say, okay, we have a couple last questions for you as we're narrowing this down. The class then participates in a vote, and my last team creates a video that kind of is the big reveal of which one they actually chose. And then we're able to send that to the director so that they can see. And my last group did a drum roll, bum, 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 here's what you got. But also, if they're not able to participate in the celebration at the end of the semester, because my course ends 7 weeks before everybody else's, that we have a video that we can share. So it's jam-packed. It does take that work up front from me. But as I said, I think it's really critical for my students. Communication is a discipline. It's a social science. We have evidence-based practice. Most of my students won't go on to do academic research. They will be practitioners in some ways. And I want them to get in the habit of using our evidence-based techniques to think about the content they design, or my ones that go on to be patient advocates. I have students that have gone on to write policy, that they start to be really intentional about thinking about the real lived and raw experiences of people when they are navigating their health. And when you get in here and you're talking to people that really need their insulin and they can't afford it, you can create a message that speaks to that a little better than just assuming that you know what they think and feel and how they want to access information and what they want to hear. So I think it's a really transformative process for my students. Every time they're apprehensive, every time they're like, I've never done anything like that before. That was really powerful. I never thought of health communication in this way before, and I certainly never thought of nonprofits as part of our healthcare system, but oh my goodness, they are. So, so I hope you'll ask questions. I hope you'll integrate this into your class. It's powerful.
That was really cool too, because I had never really thought about how to use it online, but particularly in a 7-week online class, it just seems like such a short time frame to me. And it was really wonderful that you explained the logistics of that and how you think about that ahead of time and what you're doing. And it's just really nice to see how you're able to make those connections with what you're doing in the community in an online class. I mean, I'm guessing that most of them aren't getting these types of experiences.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about what I do. I'll answer the same question. So I teach criminal justice, and most of my students are going to be practitioners, whether that's law enforcement, working in the courts or working in the jails and prisons. And so it's really important to me, like you had mentioned this, I'm going to start with my why first. So it's really important to me that they have connections with nonprofits in the community, because the folks that they're going to be working with, their clients, are going to have a lot of needs. They're underserved populations all the way around. They tend to be the poorest of the poor within our communities, less education opportunities, health care, like all the things, right? So they've got a lot of barriers. And as a police officer or a judge, you can't just be like, okay, well, be a social worker, right? And it's essentially what we need in a lot of these instances. And so it's really important to me to get them to know that these nonprofits exist, to find out about them, and to feel comfortable walking through the door. I think it's one thing to learn about something on a website, but it's totally different to walk in the door and be like, hey, my name is Danielle, and I have a question, and I'm wondering how you can help me. And so what I do in my classes, it's typically upper-level majors. I have taught it with gen ed before in the past, but I typically stick with the upper-level majors because of my why. And I put them randomly into groups, and we usually have 4 or 5, and then each group member has to take on a different role, but they pick the nonprofit. It has to do something with social justice or reducing barriers that people face when they come out of the system, or preventative before they go in. And so that's pretty wide open in regards to what you can access. And so they're to find a nonprofit on their own that addresses those issues. They are to tour the nonprofit. Again, we have students with lots of schedules and jobs and kids and all those things, so I understand that. So it's not required that everybody goes and tours, but usually at least a couple, and sometimes they'll all go, which is great. Go and tour, talk to the nonprofit, ask them questions. What would you do with the $2,000 if you were to receive the award? And really put it upon them that you're advocating, like you're the one that gets to tell their story. And so take pictures, but do it ethically, right? Like if there is a group counseling session going on, and you may be able to take a picture of the back of people's heads or the room, but we don't take pictures of people engaged in treatment and things like that. So that has to come up as well. And then they come back and they put together a presentation. Everybody has the same requirements of connecting it back to the class. What are the theories? What's the information we've learned? Why do these folks need these access to these things? What would they do with the money, right? Because that's how you get people to vote for you. And they have to vote for who wins. And it's a lot of fun to watch. They get really into it, as you know, and I love to have them call the nonprofit at the end of class and say, you won, and they're so excited about it. And they do really get into it. And a part of my why is, I do really want them to have connections with the nonprofit. So one semester I had a police officer who was coming back, full-time officer, going to school part-time, and he was in my class, and he told me that he had worked with a program in our area called Homeward Bound. And Homeward Bound is for teenagers who essentially are being neglected or abused and have nowhere to go. And so that makes you truant often, or on your own streets, which is illegal if you're a kid. And so you become a status offender and end up in the system. And Homeward Bound is there to serve as that barrier in between there. And the officer told me that before, I didn't want to see a teenage boy or girl on the street. That broke my heart. They're not safe. So I would take them to the jail. And he said, now I know about Homeward Bound. I know it's a good place, and I take them there. And that's like the win, right? Like that's what we're all looking for, is to have them figure out how they can apply that. And they also get jobs out of it, like an internship. Somebody gets a job and somebody gets an internship. They're juniors and seniors. I always tell them, you're going to be very actively involved in this class. I can write you a reference letter for college or graduate school or jobs, whatever. And you're going to be out there putting yourself out there. So ask people about internships and jobs, and someone always comes back with one. So it's a really great way for them to connect to nonprofits, which they may have not viewed as a job opportunity before, right? They come in very black and white. I'm going to be a police officer. I'm going to be this. But there's really lots of ways to be involved in assisting people through the criminal justice system. Because like you guys mentioned, they're all coming in because they want to help people, right? That's their drive for being there. So what are some obstacles, I'll put this out for each of you and go through, what are some of the obstacles you've maybe faced along the way trying to implement things, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I can think of a couple, student-related. So one is, in a way, this is a good thing, but it can be an obstacle. When some students will come into the class when they realize what we're doing on day one, they already have a nonprofit in mind. They've been volunteering, they've been working for their church or other house of worship, and so immediately they go into the project with the idea that they're going to advocate for this nonprofit. So I have learned to not only to put it in my syllabus and say it from the first day, here's what I need from you. I need an open mind, because decisions are going to have to be made, and this is an opportunity to learn about all kinds of nonprofits. And I assure them that the easy part actually is deciding which nonprofit's going to be funded. The hard part is deciding which ones are not. And so I assure them that when you leave this course, you're still leaving with knowledge of nonprofits that you can support in other ways long after the semester's over. Maybe giving money, maybe volunteering, other ways. So that's just one obstacle, the kind of coming in with that sort of pre-decision, I guess, preconception. And then maybe another obstacle, I don't know if you all experience this as much on the upper division level, but sometimes on the first year courses, we're dealing with students making the transition from high school to college. So sometimes, occasionally, students begin to discover that, when they're absent, nobody calls home. So like we might have some attendance issues, or just other challenges like that, like getting assignments in on time, being punctual, that kind of thing. So dealing with all of that, addressing those issues does require additional effort on my part, and it's something that you have to do. But it pays off, and of course it pays off for the student as well in learning academic skills. So yeah, two obstacles and how I address them.
Okay, so with my course, I think I was just thinking. So the obstacle that I can think of right now comes in because of the complicated nature of having a lot of moving parts in my course, and also particularly that is more evident in the online course. So in the course I teach, there are several different sections usually, and one is in person 16 weeks, and then another is online 16 weeks. So there's a lot of time, but we do have, so I call that Mayason project, and we have the Mayason, but then we are doing the fundraising campaign. So to do that, we use Impact NKU. That's the NKU's fundraising platform that a lot of organizations within campus use. And so we're using it, so the students get confused about what's Mayason, what's Impact NKU, and then, so in order for all the students to be able to use Impact NKU, there are these things you have to do, and then there are so many instructions. So when you're teaching it in the in-person class, you can explain a lot of things right there, and students can ask questions, they can help each other understand if there's any misunderstanding. But with the online class, if somebody's confused and too busy and kind of forget about online stuff and come back a few weeks later, they might be like way behind in understanding what's going on. So catching those people up sometimes is difficult, and then because there are also group activities going on. They have to be separated into different teams to create something together. And so sometimes somebody disappears, and some student, members of some teams get really panic and say, so-and-so has not responded, and this is due this week. Well, why didn't you call me earlier this week? So that kind of, last minute panic happens a lot more in my experience in the online section of the course. So I think it has a lot to do with my particular design of the course, using different components with different deadlines, and online versus in-person sections.
Thank you.
I'd agree with a lot of those things. With the online student, you've got some different. You just don't have some of the same luxuries of making sure you can see that everybody has it. I've rectified some of that, and I don't have as many moving parts as you have, but I'm a big syllabus quiz person in the beginning to really make sure, even things like show me that you have this downloaded, or show me a picture that you have proof of the textbook.
Right.
Or I build a lot of that into my syllabus quiz because, and our policy here at NKU is we, even on our online classes, we have a non-attendance policy. The student has to show that they've done something in the course in the first few days of that course, and so that syllabus quiz is my attendance for that online course that's asynchronous. And so I have them do a lot of those things that are annoying, like, I've got to look at instructions and make sure I'm set up for success. I make them do it and show me proof of it in the syllabus quiz to get that out of the way. So I'm not spending, for my team that works in Team 3, I'm not in week 3 still talking about how to get set up with this or that or whatever. So, and those low point value things in the beginning of the class, they still work as carrots to motivate. And I would say the other thing that I do is, in that class in particular, from the beginning, I tell students I don't want to teach this class as you are students. Like, I want to work with you as peers. Like, you are emerging professionals, and I want you to think of yourself as working for this nonprofit or as really aligned. Some of the things that I do have to watch out for, so because I'm allowing them to take the initiative and reach out and set up those appointments with the nonprofit themselves, I do make them run those emails and things by me. That's not something that I can take for granted that a student knows how to do. Some of that has just truly been lost, and that I'm finding that I really need to make sure that I use that as an opportunity to say, you're representing NKU, and so maybe a different way that we could say this, or what we want to make sure we convey here, is this. A really simple example of that is my team just last week, was getting ready to set up a time to interview the and they were going to say, well, we're available at 3:00 on Tuesday. And I was like, well, maybe. How could we say that to offer them choice in case this director of the nonprofit is not available at 3:00 on Tuesday, even though the team is. And I had to reassure them, if 4 of the 5 of you are there, and not all 5 of 5, but it works better at a different time for the nonprofit, they win. They get to, they are our client, and they're doing this, and we're kind of serving. But honestly, those obstacles have really been opportunities that the students come back later and say, I really feel like I've grown in my confidence as a professional to feel like I have something to bring to the table as a health communication professional, or like I am actually delivering something different, and I have more confidence talking with executive directors or whoever it might be than I did before. And so those aren't necessarily my learning objectives, but definitely outcomes that I feel like we get to receive as part of it.
So an obstacle that I overcame, that I often get this question when I would present about this at conferences, and then if you guys were junior faculty when you were teaching this, I'd like you to chime in on this as well. And it's, okay, this is awesome, it sounds great, I'm really into teaching, but I also have to get tenure, right?
Right.
And so I can't do this on top of everything I'm doing, and we've all been there and totally understand that, right? So how do you incorporate it and still move towards the tenure path? And so one of the things that I had done was when I was teaching 2 sections of the same class, we have a survey that we give, a pre and post survey for Mayerson, or you could create your own survey, right? And I was giving the same pre and post survey at 2 sections in the same class. One class was doing Mayerson, one class wasn't. And then I used that for a year, and I had the data from that and compared it. I was able to present at conferences on it and write an article, which I was able to publish. We all probably have teaching journals in our fields where you can publish that sort of work. So I did a lot of things like that where I was doing the same things across. So I wasn't doing totally separate teaching, totally separate research, and totally separate service projects, right? I was making them go all the way across. So I would teach it in my class, and then I would use that as data and write about it, but then also doing service and doing things like this, right? And so I could use it for all that. So those of you that went through the tenure process while you were teaching that, what were some of the things that you ran into that helped you to still be motivated to do Mayerson, incorporate it, but also still move towards tenure? Did you face any obstacles like that, or any ways that you were able to?
Well, I'm on the cusp. I'm waiting on my last letter.
Okay.
So hopefully I
So you're
tenure very soon. But
Yeah.
I would agree with what you said. I've been very successful in health communication researchers do this in different ways, but many of us are very collaborative in our work.
Mm-hmm.
And so most of my studies are with some source of a healthcare provider, whether it's a hospital or a nonprofit or whomever it may be, but I'm not necessarily working independently, but I need an external partner. And so some of my first clients when I was, I guess I'm technically on the tenure track, but when I was building my portfolio, it's turned in now, so I can't add anything right now, was a nonprofit that I was already aligned with because I was doing research. And so it also served a professional purpose for me because it was something that I could also give back to this organization that I was already aligned and doing work with, and necessarily didn't get anything out of it for me, but building that relationship was important. And also just kept me talking to the same people, so that gets easier to do. So to your point, I think there are a lot of ways that if you are teaching in this method, that you can also be using it as part of your research, or at the very least creating a gift out of some of the principles that you're using. A great idea for teaching. Most of the disciplines have that kind of panel at the conferences that you're talking about what you're doing, so that you're adding some of those things to your portfolio as you go. And so I think maximizing those things, that this can exist in different domains, is certainly doable and a smart thing to do.
And I would say, I just got my tenure. So I didn't. But however, I didn't publish anything out of my experience and data in Mayerson project. But I have been wanting to. It's just that COVID hit, right? So I was going to work on my, data analysis one summer, but my summer went, because I had to create everything. And then ever since then, I just didn't have time. So if anybody wants to do something like this and, wanting to, also have some sort of publication, look for someone like me, sitting on the data, wanting to analyze. Just haven't had a chance to, because that's my next plan. So here I am.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I would say is not related to this, but I don't know if you guys experienced this, but I would say not only does this project allow our students to really get a connection to the nonprofits, but I feel like our students that participate in Mayerson have a really strong connection to our university and to our school, and that they feel really good about the practical experience that they got here, that they can then go and talk and translate. And so that's something that I think to people who might be considering this, that are at NKU or not NKU and beyond, doing a philanthropy project like this is also really increasing an affinity and engagement within your own university. In addition to the civic engagement, they feel really good about participating in something like this.
Well, that might be a good segue to a panel that's happening later today, where we have faculty research that's actually going to support with data a lot of what you just said. So I'd just like to take a moment to thank everybody for being here today and taking the time to share your experiences. And it was great to hear all the different experiences and how logistically you've gone about doing it and the differences. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Wow, that was a really outstanding panel. Thank you so much. We'd like to now hear from our students, and we're going to take a very short break to set up. Welcome back. In this session, we'd like to welcome Dr. Rebecca Bailey, a professor of history, and she will have two of her students lead a discussion about what they did and what the experience was like.
Hi everyone, my name is Becky Bailey, and with me today are Katrina Kersell, Rebecca Gallagher, and Haley McElhenney. And we're going to share our experiences as the Fall 2023 Diverse Appalachia Mayerson and Impacting KU Student Philanthropy Project. To begin, I'm going to have these amazing young women share their experiences of working on the Student Philanthropy Project. And we'll begin with Rebecca. Rebecca, tell our friends with us today about what this has meant for you personally, academically, and professionally.
For starters, I haven't had the opportunity to work with hands-on experiences in the Appalachian region. I'm from Appalachia, born and raised in a small town in Kentucky, and throughout my entire academic experience, I never, like I said, had the option to really get boots on the ground and make a difference. And my last semester here, I joined this class and was blown away at the opportunity to really get involved in these communities. Each institution really had different missions, but it still hit home for the Appalachian in my heart. So professionally, it also, like I said, it just really rounded out my educational experience here and just meant the world to me and my Appalachian roots.
Thank you. And Trina, you were our Student Philanthropy Project team leader. Why don't you tell those with us today about everything from how we named the project to how the project really enriched our class?
Yes, so I was one of the team leaders. Our other one who wasn't here today was Maddie Keekler, and we both paired up and really tried working together with our two teams and our two different partners. Our partners were the Great Smoky Mountains Heritage Center and the West Virginia Mine Wars Museum. And so my team was with the Great Smoky Mountains Heritage Center, and we called it Enriching Appalachia. And so what we wanted to do was, as I quote Rebecca, to work from a place of power, not pity. And so we wanted to show these places as how amazing they are and how they don't just help the history, but they help the community as a whole by creating an economic engine there.
Okay. And Haley, why don't you tell our audience just how much money we raised and all of the different things that you all did?
Okay, so we, first of all, blew it out of the park with raising money, which was great. This was our first project of the semester. We were still, not comfortable with each other. And this cemented us as a group, as a forever group, which was great for me because I was new to this school and I now have, best friends for life. So our original goal was for $2,000, and we, in 5 days, got that, which was fantastic. So we were like, all right, we're reaching for the moon. Our next goal is 3,000. And we hit that just before our mark. So we were like, all right, let's try a little bit more. And I believe we raised $3,700, which was fantastic. So yeah, it was great to work with each other, in a project that was hands-on for us and hands-on for helping our the community, actually providing something for an institution and not just the regular college learn information regurgitated. We got work experience, we grew passion for these people, which helped in our further projects for this class. And yeah.
Okay. Thank you all for that. Just to add a little bit more detail for some of the educators in the audience, the focus of our class, the class title was Diverse Appalachia, Social Media and Museums. And I'm really dating myself when I say this, but I predate social media. So I think what was really wonderful was, and forgive me for this shameless pitch, I was not part of the team that produced it, but the Scripps Howard Center, the handbook that they have for civic engagement and student philanthropy really helps instructors create a system and a system of guardrails that once you get that in place and you set students loose on a project, how they bring prior knowledge from their personal lives in social media to their personal passions and interests, it's a wonder to behold. So as an educator, speaking from my heart to the educators in our audience, if your personal goal is to create a way for your students to become your teacher, you need to do this, because I have never been prouder of it. We were tiny but mighty. There were, what the young women haven't mentioned yet is 5 of them raised $3,700. Thanks to we raised $2,700 thanks to the Mayerson Foundation that matched our initial 1,000 raised. Does anyone remember what our partners are going to do with the $1,850 each of them received?
For the Great Smoky Mountains Heritage Center, they actually have a program where they teach local students about how to play Appalachian music and instruments. And so it's really cool. So it's going to that after-school program to use to buy new instruments, strings for the instruments, and also for scholarships for the students.
And then our other community partner, the Mine Wars Museum, is creating an interview room because they want to collect oral histories of the people in town and what those current residents remember about their ancestors and how they helped build the town and give it the character it has.
So how did our projects reflect what you learned about diversity in Appalachia?
Our project definitely took us down some rabbit holes because we fell in love with these institutions and wanted to, now that we gave them money, we want to do everything for them.
It's like our baby, almost.
Yes.
I can't let go. Technically, I graduated, and I just can't let go of it, so...
So talk about stewardship. What did you all learn about stewardship from this experience?
I mean, it showed how important it was to really represent the ones, especially in Appalachia. As someone who's also from Appalachia, a lot of times they get pushed over and just don't see their history as something that's important. And so it's really cool for us to learn how to kind of show underrepresented groups, and not just Appalachia as a whole, but the subgroups and minorities in Appalachia.
It's a really great point. So I learned actually that I'm from northern Appalachia. I'm born and raised in upstate New York. So I took this class as wanting to learn about my new region, and it really gave me kind of a sense of identity of these are my new people, but these have always been my people, and I haven't learned about them before. And learning about the deep history roots and first learning about the stereotypes and how they happen and how they're untrue, but how we got here and these understandings, and then looking into these two towns, because Great Smoky Mountains is in Tennessee, Mine Wars Museum is in West Virginia, and they both have deep roots that are very different from each other, but also connect in a very lovely way.
It was also an interesting challenge to tell these institutions' stories and their missions from a positive point. Typically, when you see Appalachia in media, it's very sad, or people pity us, or it's a negative light. But our whole goal here was, like she said again, we worked from power and not pity. We are proud to be in the Appalachian region and to be Appalachian. And to give back to the region and the communities was such an honor. We learned so much. And it also just goes to show that the Appalachian region is very diverse. We're under one name, but very, very a diverse region.
If Maddie were here with us, because Maddie joined us from organizational leadership, which is the specialization of several other participants today. Do you all remember some of the skills that Maddie would list off that you all were learning and polishing from this experience?
Yeah, one of the big ones she used, which I'd never heard of, but the organizational leadership department really like pressed on her, was like the 5 W's. And so like, why are we doing this? Who are we doing it for? What are we doing this? And so on. And so that was something like she'd always, every time we hit like a little pothole in the road, she'd be like, remember the 5 W's. I'm like, oh, this makes sense.
It was great to have her as a leader because she very much brought that aspect of like, all right, let's go back to the basics. Like, what is the mission? Why are we doing this? Like, what is the heart and soul of this whole thing? And she had a lot of like organizational systems that we hadn't thought of. So her herself was great. Can take that away from this class of like how to be a better student, how to be more organized.
Also, working with professional institutions, you have to be professional, especially whenever we were using our social medias and interacting with the public for a museum that we didn't directly work for. We had to be careful and tread waters differently than you would on a normal like Facebook post. So that was also a big thing Maddie would remind us about, is just how to interact in a professional setting.
To start summing up, what is one takeaway for each of you that this experience let you tap into something that you hadn't tapped into in other classes?
I mean, for me, it gave me so much. I mean, a lot of times, kind of how Haley said, we regurgitate the information, but in this sense, it's like you're actually doing something that matters. It's real work, and it's not like, you know, a figurative place that you're helping. It's like real people, and it actually matters. And so it was so amazing experience.
Becca added something to her resume that is real, fundraising. And Haley actually chose what she was going to do for graduate school, right?
Yeah, so this class definitely was an eye-opener for me because I was going between like going into like working in a library or working in a museum, and this class was like, I want to be with the people. I want to make these big changes in the world. I want to be a public historian. So that was fantastic to be able to, you know, narrow down my options and really find my passion point.
And they now have a new name. They bonded so tightly. They're now officially the Shield Maidens.
Yeah. We got so deep into this that we have matching sweatshirts.
Yes.
We hang out monthly. We are the little nerds that will go to museums together.
We have crocheted shields and swords that hang in our cars. We now got 3D printed little swords for like bookmarks, and so, yeah.
That is also called networking. This bond will be forever.
Oh, yeah. We're going to continue to grow this relationship.
Yeah. And it's awesome that we're all at different stages. Like, none of us are the same age. All of us are graduating at different points or already graduated, even though we don't accept that fact.
No. She's forever a undergraduate graduate.
Yeah. We're taking away your master's degree.
Please don't.
So there's magic in this experience. And NKU Scripps Howard Center and the Mayerson Family Foundation have created a framework that all you need to do is borrow it, jump on the ride, and you'll bring a bunch of great students along with you. And it'll be one of the most rewarding experiences of their life. So thank you for letting us share today.
It's been a great experience.
Yes.
I could have never imagined I would move 800 miles away from my home and end up with 5 best friends.
To find your new home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's never leaving. We've kidnapped her.
New York gas prices, I can't. I can't afford it.
Wow, what an amazing panel. I've just have been getting chills up my arms the whole time you've been speaking. And while it's just a small example, I wanted to let you know that I was so inspired. So I'm the faculty coordinator, and we had our awards ceremony, and we watched and heard about your investments and all the hard work that you've been doing. And just on a personal note, I was so inspired, as I often am, with the hard work and the amazing work that students do semester after semester. But I actually went to the museum outside of Knoxville, so the Great Smoky Mountain, or the Great Smoky Mountain Museum, and I was told by Dr. Bailey that I could easily spend a day there, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I usually am a fast museum walker, although I love museums. I could have spent a week there. I was so captivated. So everyone in the audience, you need to go to that museum. It is amazing. And I learned so much. I'm from Minnesota originally, so a little far away from that region, but I had so much fun learning, and I just thought about your class the whole time. So sorry, a little off topic, but I'm so proud of all of you, and thanks for your hard work, truly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, welcome for those of you who are just joining us. In our last session, we heard about the student experiences from 3 amazing students, and now we're going to have 4 panelists talk about academic research on student philanthropy, and we're going to take a short break to set up with these experts from NKU, but also other institutions, so stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone. Now we are going to talk about the research aspect of experiential philanthropy. So welcome, panelists. Please put questions in the chat.
Hi, everybody. My name is Julie Olberding, and I'm a professor at Northern Kentucky University. I'm happy to kind of be kicking this panel off. I want to thank our panelists, to include Dr. David Campbell, Dr. Whitney McIntyre Miller, and Dr. Megan Downing. We've heard a lot of experiences from individual faculty members and students, and this will be an opportunity to kind of look at other programs that are happening at other universities, as well as studies that take different perspectives and even look at programs nationally. So we all have a lot to share. In fact, I know, and maybe 1 or 2 of us kind of feel like we're going to have to squeeze a lot into the time that we have. So I am just going to launch it off to Dr. Campbell first to introduce himself. He's from Binghamton University, New York. Talk a little bit about that, and then the research that he's done in experiential philanthropy.
Thanks, Julie. And it's such a pleasure to be on a panel at Northern Kentucky University, because you all really are the leaders in this field. And many of us who work in the field of experiential philanthropy have learned from the model that Northern Kentucky has established and from lessons that you've taught us. I'm a professor of public administration at Binghamton. I do research in a variety of areas, but I've been teaching experiential philanthropy since 2009. And my involvement with these classes has really led me to sort of think about what are some of the important sort of research questions that emerge from experiential philanthropy courses, and how can I do research that will make me a better teacher, or really learn from what I've been teaching and what others are doing, so that I can really sort of improve this model. So I'm going to share my screen and share the presentation I've created for you, and talk a little bit about the research that I have done. Again, I have 2 things I want to sort of talk about. The first is really course models, or the settings for experiential research, which was really the first thing that I've done, and a more recent study that I've done about what are people reading in these experiential philanthropy courses. So first, the thing that sort of, I think by means of context is just to know that I had created a program at Binghamton called the Philanthropy Incubator. And if you're curious, the link is in the slides to it. This is a screenshot from that, but the Philanthropy Incubator is really our program that we use to illustrate to students that we offer several experiential philanthropy courses. It was established in 2009. It includes both undergraduate and graduate courses, not different from Northern Kentucky insofar as they're really courses either in public administration or in a specific major, the philosophy, politics, and law major. And in that time, we've given over $200,000 in grants to the greater Binghamton community. And Binghamton University is part of the State University of New York. And we are in upstate New York. And we've supported in that time sort of more than 25 organizations, generally giving out between $10,000 and $15,000 a year in grants. I received my funding for my course from the Learning by Giving Foundation. It supported the undergraduate work at Binghamton since 2010. And for more or less since 2010, I've served as a leader on its faculty advisory board, Learning by Giving, founded by Doris Buffett. That logo is sort of a picture of her. So I'm going to talk about the two research articles that I have done related to experiential philanthropy. The first one is called Practicing Philanthropy in American Higher Education, Cultivating Engaged Citizens and Nonprofit Sector Professionals. I published that actually, yikes, 10 years ago now in the Journal of Public Affairs Education. And more recently, a year or two ago, I wrote this article, The Experiential Philanthropy Canon, What Students Read in Experiential Philanthropy Courses and Why It Matters. Those of you who are students may be interested to know that of the three authors, Matt Rosansky was a student in one of the courses, and it shows you that students can play a role in doing research on this topic. In terms of the first article, what I was interested in back in 2014, really 2013 and 2014, was sort of what is the nature of these courses. I had a sense that this field of experiential philanthropy was growing, but I couldn't put my arms around the number and sort of extent of these courses, in what kinds of settings were they landing, what were the course models, and I wanted to explore that question. One of the things that's important about it, though, is that the data were collected 2013 and 2014, and those of you who were at Northern Kentucky then would know that Northern Kentucky was part of the Pay It Forward project that was funded by the Kentucky, Ohio, and Michigan Campus Compact programs through the Corporation for National and Community Service. And that program went away, but it may have grown the number of courses. But I think some of my findings are really sort of shaped by that experience. I'm going to show you just a couple of tables from this research that capture sort of what I learned. So the first question that I wanted to know is sort of what disciplines and academic units host these courses. And there were 88 courses that I found. I reviewed syllabi. I was curious what kinds of faculty, what kinds of departments would see experiential philanthropy as appropriate. And what I found was that most of them, or a majority of them, were in undergraduate pre-professional degree programs. And that people saw experiential philanthropy as something that prepared people for careers. And those would be places like business or management departments or human services departments, and then a wide range of some others, including sort of medical professions and things like that. The others actually were in the distribution was in somewhat smaller numbers. Social science departments had only 15, sociology, economics, political science. In humanities, there were fewer: English, art, and history. And then a few of them fell into these special categories of programs within colleges and universities. An honors college or a first-year experience, or even in some civic engagement unit of the university. But the thing that sort of stands out here is that there really were predominantly in pre-professional programs and fewer in traditional arts and sciences. And then I also wanted to know, what is it that courses were trying sort of to teach? And I saw sort of 4 different kinds of models, again, some that were really about the discipline in particular, the discipline in which the course was offered, some which were a variation of nonprofit management education, and then smaller numbers that were focused either on civic engagement or first-year experience. And then within that, I asked, well, what kind of content are students being exposed to? Um, the most significant amount was around practical skills, grant making, and then to a lesser extent, management issues in nonprofit organizations and philanthropy, management of nonprofit organization, or managing nonprofit organizations as it applies to a specific discipline. Arts organizations, sort of, for example, or healthcare organizations in particular. So this really sort of gave me a sense of what people were trying to accomplish through these experiential philanthropy programs. More recently, I've thought about this question of what are our students reading in these courses? If the first set of the first research project I did just addressed the question, who's interested in these classes and what are their sort of course goals? I was driven more by the sense of, well, what are people trying to teach here? And what drove me to this question were some things I was observing in the national environment. This is an article I wrote for The Conversation based on reflections that I'd read in my class. My students see giving away money as a good thing, but they're getting leery of billionaire donors. And what I worried about is, are people just sort of seeing philanthropy as really about billionaires? Or even a new reason, this is another article I wrote for The Conversation called "A New Reason Americans Are Getting Leery of Billionaire Donors." And so I was curious, why were my students sort of getting this impression? I didn't think that I wanted them to focus on billionaires, but billionaires is sort of where their heads were at when it came to philanthropy. So I wanted to look at how courses were presenting the role that philanthropy plays in civic life, and really the perception of their giving versus sort of billionaire giving. And so what I did was I looked at 33 syllabi of courses funded by the Learning by Giving Foundation and asked, what kind of content are students being introduced to? And the context for this was to say, well, do researchers see philanthropy as a good thing? Do they have an affirmative view of it? You know, the traditional sort of Andrew Carnegie role, or even a more recent reform-minded role derived from people like Darren Walker at the Ford Foundation, Phil Buchanan from the Center for Effective Philanthropy, and Beth Breeze, the British scholar, or people sort of more critical like Anand Giridharadas, Rob Reich, and Edgar Villanueva, who are sort of really worried about whether philanthropy is really problematic. And I looked at these syllabi through that lens. One of the things that I saw is that mostly what students were getting introduced to was material that was about the nature of philanthropy writ large. So you see, what they saw more than anything else were critiques of philanthropy, information about the gospel of wealth and this reform view of the gospel of wealth, some stuff on strategy, but really looking at philanthropy at the sort of macro level was what many students were being introduced to, and then some process things. Another way to sort of look at it is just to say, what were the most common readings across courses? And there are these readings that really sort of focused on the gospel of wealth, or these big questions about the nature of philanthropy, which would affect or would give students a picture that philanthropy is about billionaires or very wealthy people. Gospel of Wealth for the 21st Century, the Gospel of Wealth by Carnegie, Rich's Just Giving, Edgar Villanueva's Decolonizing Wealth. And when I looked at, I categorized content, I saw that the total number of readings by category, there were many more readings on philanthropy or nature of philanthropy and process than there were about questions of giving at the individual level. What does giving sort of mean to me? And so where that left me in the end, and I'm just about to sort of wrap up, is to say that these courses were focusing on the nature of philanthropy sort of writ large, on the role of foundations, on the role of billionaires, and these sort of normative and policy questions about what philanthropy should be. but there was much more limited focus on what does giving sort of mean to me? What's the role of individual giving in civic life? Why might I, as a regular non-billionaire person, be motivated to give? Or how students can make a difference. And so in some ways, it's unsurprising that that leaves students to say that they're sort of leery of billionaire donors. And so my takeaway is sort of this. I think that it's led me to sort of think differently about what I teach, that when I teach experiential philanthropy, I want to focus on educating students for citizenship, encourage them to reflect on the role of giving in their lives, and present classes more as giving circles, opportunities for collaborative, collective giving rather than foundations, and emphasize student agency as donors who can make a difference. One way to do that in my classes is I ask students to contribute something of $15 a semester and to a larger pot of money where students give away, or students are contributing to the amount the class gives away in something we call sort of a charity pitch. The $15 is instead of a book. And I only do 1 hour-and-a-half session all semester on foundations, the nature of big philanthropy and things like that, because I think that actually leads students to focus wrongly on, or focus on the wrong things and not on their role as people who might give. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Julie, I hope that's not too much time, and hopefully it's a reasonable start.
That was excellent. It really laid a great foundation, I think, for this panel, just to have a better understanding of what's happening across the country. I love, the suggestions about readings, and I know myself, I've looked at your article, and so I hope it motivates other faculty who are doing it already or thinking about it to take a closer look at your JPAE article. So thank you so much for that. And Dr. McIntyre Miller, will shift it off to you. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Hopefully you all can see my slides here. I still need the presenter view, so you get the extra tab too, but hopefully that's okay. It is nice to see you all. Good morning from here in California, but good afternoon to those of you who are on the other side of the country. I'm calling in here today from Chapman University, which is in Southern California. We like to tell people we're really close to Disneyland because most folks kind of have a sense of where that might be. So happy to be here and to spend some time with you this morning and this afternoon. I'm going to talk to you about the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project, which is our project here at Chapman University. So again, my name is Whitney McIntyre Miller. I'm Associate Professor of Leadership Studies here in our Atala College of Educational Studies. And I am the co-director of the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project, which we affectionately call PEP, because the Panther Experiential Philanthropy Project is a lot to say on a regular basis. I'm really happy that my co-director, Elisa Driscoll, is also on the call. She can't be here for the whole time, so I'm taking the lead here, but she's here as well. So I'm really grateful for her to be here. And really, it was her brainchild, PEP. So whenever we present, I usually make her do this part because she's the one that really put all the things together that made PEP what it is today. Some of you, I know, I was at NKU from 2010 to 2014 before joining Chapman University, where I've been for the past 10 years, which is sort of hard to believe. In the 2018-2019 school year, I had the pleasure of working with Elisa as she was completing her Master's of Leadership Development capstone project. And she was really looking to find a way to bridge her passion between giving back and philanthropy with her professional life, working on a college campus. Elisa is our Vice President for Community Relations here at Chapman University. And so we had conversations about my work with Mayerson at NKU, and she did tons and tons and tons of reading about experiential philanthropy and giving and working with Gen Z students. And the first PEP project class was piloted in the spring of 2019 This was back when we were still printing those giant checks. This is from our very first class. With COVID, we went online, and then we haven't been presenting as many of those really giant checks as we'd like to, but maybe we can get back to that one day. So PEP has 6 goals. I want to tell you a little bit about this before we talk more sort of about the research side of things. The learning by giving approach, those of you familiar with the Mayerson Project, this will sound very familiar to you. The importance of meaningful community engagement, the ability to foster important transferable skills, teamwork, persuasive thinking, things that people can take from this project onto other sorts of things as well. Building your professional network, really ensuring that students can connect with the folks that they're working with in their nonprofit organizations. Developing awareness of real life social issues, really beginning to understand, and you'll see when I present a little bit of the data that we really do see those connections being made between students here in Orange County, California, and what we're seeing, what they're seeing with social issues and with nonprofits in the area. And then, of course, also building the pipeline of next gen donors as well. Our program is a baby program. So Elisa and I have 2 full-time jobs. Like I said, she's the Vice President of Community Relations. I'm a full-time faculty member, and the PEP program is run by the 2 of us doing the best we can to keep ourselves going. So we're still pretty small. We're still pretty flexible. We still engage in the indirect model of giving. We work only with classes. We have big dreams about doing time banking and lots of other sorts of things. But our capacity right now is still sort of a little bit small. But we are able to provide the $1,000 to $2,000 to classes, depending on the numbers of classes that we engage with each year and each semester. Most of our donations comes directly from our Office of Community Relations. Chapman is a private institution, and so we have an intentional giving approach that's part of the work that the university does. And so we are grateful that the Office of Community Relations sponsors much of the bulk of the work that we do. Several colleges and universities colleges and schools at the university have also funded specific individual courses, and so we get funding from smaller academic units as well. And then we also have a group of private donors that help to bring the PEP project to life. Also funding, like we've heard previously today, special interest pieces as well as sort of large overall funding. In 2020 and 2021, we had a donor who was really interested in looking at organizations that were centering Black lives. And so we had 2 semesters where that was our focus as PEP. So because we're small, we get to be lean and flexible, which is really nice. So far we have had courses in 3 of our schools and colleges. Our academic home is in the Atala College of Educational Studies, which is where I am a faculty member. We have an IES 103 class, which is our sort of undergraduate teaching and learning prep program. A little bit wider information about what we could do there is our flagship course. Almost every semester, we have at least one section of the course participating, which is really great. And then we have some of these other courses coming in and out as things go through. In fact, I believe that we have 4 sections of IES 103 participating in the class this spring, which is really exciting. So it's become something, a little bit of a spoken word that people know that if you're taking IES 103, likely you're going to be involved in a PEP project. So a little bit by our numbers, we're pretty exciting for the little program that could. 11 semesters that we've been doing PEP. We've funded 33 local Orange County nonprofits. We try really hard not to repeat funding for 2 years so that we can get a wide variety of folks being funded. We've given over $50,000 to these nonprofits over this time. We're almost to that 600 student mark, so we will go well over the 600 students this semester, this spring. We've had 10 faculty who participated in the program by bringing it into to its class as well. Shockingly, I have not done it yet. It's not awful, but it's going to happen. I'm going to get the right course at the right time, and it's going to happen really soon. We're making a commitment for that as well. Okay, so really quickly, a little bit about our research process. Those of you familiar with Mayerson and KU, you'll see that this is very similar. We actually have used the same survey that's been used in the Mayerson classes, which has been very intentional. So once we move from sort of our baby research stage to our big research stage, we can actually compare data together. We've also been working with colleagues at Rutgers University who have been doing the same as well. So the idea is hopefully we can eventually move these together. We also have IRB approval to do post-course focus groups to be able to really sort of talk more in depth with students about what they got out of these courses. We have not yet moved to the space where we can talk with faculty and nonprofit leaders in a way that's really intentional about their experiences, but that's definitely on our radar too. So again, because we haven't had the opportunities to do as robust of a study as we wanted to, I wanted to just highlight some real key areas from the past 4 semesters. We're pretty pumped. That's a scientific term, research term, right? We're pretty pumped with some of these numbers. I mean, when you've got multiple things within the 97% students somewhat and strongly agree, 98% about awareness of local Orange County nonprofits, that's something that we're really excited about, that we see that students really are feeling as though what they're learning has made an impact on them, on their belief that they can actually make a difference, and the fact that they should do something about it, that they should have some responsibility, is really important to us as well. So I put some quotes on here. I'm happy to share them with folks too. No act of helping is too small. It's one of my favorites. And this corp helped motivate me to join student government and try to make a change in my community. These are just some quotes from just one semester. If I had more time, there's so many great quotes that I could post on this, but I think you'll see, similar to what you've heard earlier today, that it really does make an impact on these students. And so we're really grateful to be able to be part of this work and to really help grow what's happening in student philanthropy in the classroom, and then also sort of be able to contribute that moving forward in the research side as well. So Mary's Kitchen is a local institution here in Orange. And so we will end here with the picture of this group, which is our second group of PEP students as well. And here's our contact info too, and we're happy to answer questions as we move forward.
Thank you, Whitney, so much.
You're welcome.
It's just very inspiring and interesting to see student philanthropy go out to other universities. You know, of course, we have a place in our heart for the Mayerson Student Philanthropy Project. So, you know, it's you know, just near and dear to our heart. So we like to see that it is being spread, both in terms of your presentation and David's presentation. I'm not going to talk much here. I'll leave some time for discussion, but I will leave one hot tip on terms of the big check, which NKU has shifted to. And this is the staff there. It's a big whiteboard check, so it can be reused. There's usually 2 of them at the ceremony. They can be wiped clean. We can do photographs and use them again and again. I will say one year, the first year, I accidentally used a permanent marker. So I kind of failed that. But, you know, just for anybody out there that's doing a program or thinking about doing it, that's one way to bring back the big check and have it be reusable.
That's great. Good tip.
Okay, Megan. And we're doing great with time. Thank you, guys.
Sure. Hopefully that's working. Is it? Okay. All right. I can't find my toolbar to unmute me. Am I unmuted? Okay, there it is. I am unmuted. I had too many screens up. Apologies. Hi, I'm Megan Downing, Associate Professor of Organizational Leadership. And I've been teaching in Mayerson I was trying to figure that out yesterday. I think it's been at least 15 years because I did some adjuncting before I was full-time faculty, and I had the pleasure of working with the Mayerson project. And I can't imagine teaching without it. To be honest, we were talking about that earlier today. I've also had the pleasure of participating participating in research from different perspectives, but I'm going to focus today on this particular item that's you see on the screen. The title is a mouthful, so I've got the title here, but I just wanted to make sure to recognize the research team because this was not a solo project. My marvelous co-authors, you've met Kaisa earlier, Kaisa Larson, Joe Nolan, who isn't here today, and of course, Mark Nykirk. And we published this in the journal College Student Retention, but the findings have also been noted in other publications and podcasts. And so I'm really pleased to share the key findings about the Marison Project and high impact practices that contribute to student academic success with you today. So you know some basic things, but I have to share this because I don't know how to talk about it without giving these foundational contents, but just a reminder about, key components. The professor's the guide on the side. The students are in direct contact with the community through their work. They're in charge of the grant giving outcome and the decision making. And as Mark would say, the Marison Project is designed to amplify what a professor is teaching and to contribute to the students' civic education, specifically to build their understanding of community needs, how nonprofits address those needs, and how students can join in addressing those needs. But in the process, we also really want to support the students' educational process and hopefully keep their, extend that engagement and facilitate their ability to complete their degree. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So rooted in experiential learning, the Marison Project aligns with high impact educational practices. These are institutional practices that are recommended by the Association of American Colleges and Universities that are proven to support student success. And those of you who are familiar with Dr. D. Fink, he did research on these high impact practices to dig down into them and separate them a little bit further, not just the institutional practices, but to identify those that he indicated are specific to teaching, and he refers to them as high impact teaching practices. And you'll see those listed here on this slide. They're active learning strategies that improve learning outcomes, increase student engagement, and support student retention. So by the very nature of the course components, Marison Student Philanthropy Project courses align with these high impact teaching strategies. They include both team-based and individual coursework, specifically reflection, an essential component of experiential learning. So it's a big part of our experiential philanthropy component. And in our study, we highlighted a few examples of courses that, infuse these practices to give people some descriptive nature of how they can implement them in this course. And I know because of time limitation, I can't get too detailed, but I want to share a couple of them here for context. So one example of high impact teaching practices is in a 100 level gen ed leadership course that has been taught in multiple modalities, including in high schools and on campus as a dual credit course where students earn both high school and college credit, traditional on campus classes, online asynchronous delivery. And during the pandemic, I was teaching it face to face and flipped it to a synchronous online class. And I have to say that teaching with Marison during that time when the world was upside down for these students really helped to keep those first-time freshmen engaged in the course. And with a traditional Marison student philanthropy learning by giving approach, the students in this course worked in small groups to research nonprofits with a global reach, explored service and nonprofit work in global cultural contexts, and selected one organization to receive the $2,000 grant. But I want to share a slightly different approach that another professor takes, because in other courses, students engage in service in addition to philanthropy with their Marison classes. Pictured here is a student in Professor Ronnie Chamberlain's costume design course. She's preparing a doll and doll costumes for donation to a local nonprofit. On the next slide, I have a quick glance in that chart of her high impact teaching practices. In the course, the students are polishing their costume design skills. They research local nonprofits, and then they choose a nonprofit to receive the doll donation as well as a monetary grant award from the Marison Student Philanthropy Project Foundation. So this chart shows the robust high impact teaching practices in the student experience from start to finish, costumes from conceptualization to creation. So, and as the faculty who teach with Marison Project know, it has a significant real-time benefit to the students. We see this anecdotally. We see it consistently. We see these benefits in action over the 25 years of the program. But to strengthen those observations, of course, we collect data. And some have already talked a little bit about our pre and post survey. So each semester, we collect this data on perceptions relevant to the Mayerson project and students' experiences. They're based on a series of Likert scale questions. They provide quantitative data and open responses that provide rich qualitative data about student perceptions, attitudes, and experiences regarding their service and philanthropy, both before and after they've participated in the program. And at the time of our study, we had 15 years of administering the surveys with two resounding conclusions that have been confirmed over and over again when comparing the pre and post test results. Student answers demonstrated an increase in their awareness of community needs in the region, as well as their awareness of nonprofits. And students also noted an increased interest in service learning. In the post survey, the majority of students said that the Mayerson project had a positive or very positive impact in practical aspects, such as their interest in the course, the learning of the material, application of information, functional life skills, and a desire to stay in school. So we've seen evidence of the benefits in our classroom, and we see it in these students' responses, all of which are really encouraging. But for our study, we wanted to go a step further. We wanted to compare reported student perceptions with quantitative data for empirical evaluation of the academic outcomes. For example, students indicated that they desired to stay in college and complete a degree, but did the students who enrolled in Mayerson classes actually do this at a different rate than those who didn't participate in a Mayerson? And what we learned is that student philanthropy, no surprise, is clearly a student success accelerator. I mean, I have a little bias about it, but it's nice to have the numbers, right? So a bit more about the data analysis. We had 4 years of data, and on our research team, we were really fortunate to work with Dr. Joe Nolan, director of the Burkhardt Center, which is NKU's Statistical Consulting Center. And he would tell you that one of the reasons he became excited to work on this research is that the design for the study of graduation rates and retention is quasi-experimental and very sound in comparison to many other educational studies. More importantly, students are blinded during enrollment, so they don't know until they show up for the first day of class that they've enrolled in a Mayerson course. And this fact eliminates what might otherwise be a large source of potential bias to the analysis. And in examining rates of graduation and retention, what we did was we compared time-specific cohorts of students exiting a Mayerson course to the corresponding cohort of all students at NKU. So for example, first semester sophomores taking a Mayerson course were compared to all first semester sophomores. So if I could just quote Joe here, he noted that he was frankly amazed by what we found with graduation rates, that it was astounding, and he thinks that these results are primarily why the student received national interest on the level that it did. And that is that for all cohorts, from freshmen to junior, that the Mayerson cohorts graduate at a rate that appears to be at least 10 percentage points higher than the university as a whole. In particular, the graduation rate for students taking a Mayerson course during their sophomore year may be as much as 30 percentage points higher than the overall cohort. And while we recognize that larger sample sizes are still desirable for better precision, and it's something we definitely plan to revisit over the next few years, these are really robust numbers, very promising numbers, and the study taken as a whole is strongly suggestive of at least 15 to 20 percentage points across the board, which is, I think you can agree, amazing numbers. So in addition, the study also examined retention and completion of credit hours. For retention, there were some noted gains in some cohorts. Again, sample sizes we recognize weren't yet large enough to provide statistical evidence and something we intend to study in the near future. But for credit hour completion, while the statistical methods for analysis are a little less robust, you can see here that students in Mayerson cohort had a slightly greater credit hour completion rates in the following 2 semesters compared to the university as a whole. So it's something we're looking forward to continuing to study. Joe summarizes that and I want to use his words so I don't mess it up, but the most conservative estimate for all the cohorts that all sophomores enrolling in Mayerson courses would have a better than 38% 4-year graduation rate, and it could even be higher. For the 39 and 38 students in these cohorts, it was actually 53 and 63% respectively. But again, he, emphasizes those are sample numbers and shouldn't be treated as precise population estimates, but still very robust. So I'm going to wrap up here just to summarize that the project is an extraordinary way of teaching, rich with high impact teaching practices just by the nature of the experiential learning and the work that goes into it. And it works in every instance, and it does so at two significant levels in teaching stewardship, but also contributing to student success, including all important graduation rates. So that's all from me, and I'll turn it over now to Julie.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate it. That was great. I am just going to jump right into my presentation based on the time that we have, and hopefully we will have, time for questions at the end. So can you all see this currently? Yep. Okay, great. So in thinking about research that I could present, I was thinking about the audience and what might be of most interest to you. I know we have a few funders, some representatives of foundations here today. So the two that I'm going to talk about are long-term effects of experiential philanthropy and then experiential philanthropy in online classes. So I'm just going to dig right in. I have a lot of words on my slides. So if I don't get through them all, if I skip some, I'm happy to share them with you. I can also send the articles to you as well. This one on long-term effects was published in Innovative Higher Education more than 10 years ago. It's kind of this whole COVID time period that we're in. It's kind of shocking that it's been that long ago, but that is where we are. But again, I wanted to share it because it was, I think, the first that looked at long-term impacts, and I haven't seen many others since then. So I think it's important because when people create these programs and when people fund them, a lot of times they're looking at what is going to happen in the long term. I know at NKU, one of the ideas that this would help create a culture of philanthropy in Northern Kentucky, a culture of stewardship. And so that was really the intent of this project. So in terms of research questions, this is kind of, broken up, and I will present this to you, but really the first one is about learning, awareness of social needs and nonprofit organizations. The second one is about their behaviors, and this is for alumni that have graduated from NKU. And then the third is a different way to measure philanthropic behaviors. So I'll start with the sample, actually. This was an interesting process, and I don't know if I would do it again, but I want to thank the Center for Civic Engagement for helping me with this, the Registrar's Office, our advancement office, because we were reaching out to alumni. So first of all, we had to identify Mayerson classes, students who were in that via the Registrar's Office, find them through our advancement office, and then reach out to them. So in the end, we were able to identify 430 alumni, and 127 of them responded. So it was about a 30% response rate, which was pretty good. And in terms of the structure of the survey instrument, I'll just say for the first part, it was what we use in those pre-post surveys. So just kind of duplicated those questions and asked the alumni the same thing 1 to 10 years after their experience. We also had a section, and we'll look at the specific items related to this, but it was more about their community and civic behavior, things like attending city council meetings, writing a letter to the editor, kind of this broader idea of civic engagement. And then we had a set of surveys that asked specifically about their volunteering, donating to charitable organizations, and serving on nonprofit boards. And those items were based on Bureau of Labor Statistics survey items. So this is a big table with a lot of things. I'll just point out that the findings are very similar to what we find in the end of survey or end of semester surveys. Really positive findings in the 90th percentile in terms of their awareness of nonprofit organizations, their awareness of problems and needs in the community. So again, this is the impact of their student philanthropy experience on those levels of awareness. And I kind of have it in order, sort of decreasing impact. Again, in light of time, I'm just going to skip to the next slide, but happy to share this with you later. So these are those broader items related to community and civic engagement. I will say these are actual behaviors. The slide before, was awareness and intentions, intended behavior. So we're asking people who, again, have graduated a year or 10 years ago, to what degree did that philanthropy experience impact your donating money? Again, the higher impacts are at the top, the more positive impacts. So about 2/3 of respondents said that the student philanthropy experience had a positive impact on them, donating money, volunteering, and working with someone or a group to solve problems in their community. It gets less as we go down through the table. One thing I want to point out is number 9 is they're serving on a board of directors for one or more nonprofit organizations. And this number may seem small. It's 25% indicated that their experience had a positive impact. It's relatively small, but it's important. And we'll get to that in another slide or two. In this slide, in fact. So these are the questions that are based on BLS items. And so we asked them, same language, had they contributed financially to at least one nonprofit organization? That's a synopsis of it. 86% of alumni said that during the past 12 months, they had contributed financially. And then we found different data to try to compare that to in terms of the national population. These figures are from IU's Center for Philanthropy. So in the general population, each year, that's about 65 to 70%. So with alumni of philanthropy experiences, that was noticeably higher, 15 to 20 percentage points higher. The second one is actually the second, third are, I think, more noteworthy. We asked these alumni, had they volunteered through or for an organization during the past 12 months? And 71% of philanthropy alumni indicated that they had. Based on that year of BLS data, but this is kind of typical in surveys, is that it's usually about 25 to 30% of Americans in general, adult Americans, volunteer through or for an organization. So in this case, it was noticeably higher, 45 percentage points, and about 3 times the amount. I will say for those of us who have taught student philanthropy classes or done research, this probably isn't that surprising because we get data, both quantitative and qualitative, that indicate that through their experience, students realize that they can make a difference, that they're one person, but it matters. And so I feel like there is a thread that continues through this in terms of asking alumni about the actual, years later, to what degree it impacted that behavior. And then lastly, we asked how many of them, or asked them if they had served on one nonprofit board during the past 12 months. 15% of philanthropy alumni had. Again, that seems like a relatively small number, but compared to the general population, that's about 3 times. So it seems that, just to answer the question, the big question that I asked at the beginning, does student philanthropy work? And these data and findings seem to indicate that it does matter, that it does help student philanthropists become real philanthropists in their community and region. Okay, I'm going to hit on this even more quickly. This is a more recent study that Megan and I did. It was published in the Journal of Nonprofit Education and Leadership. I'm sharing it with those of you, those faculty that are participating today or who may be watching this later, that think that they can't do it because they teach online classes. And I will say I was in that boat. I was actually in the boat of I never want to teach an online class, 8 years ago. But our program, in response to our students' needs and preferences, started adding more online classes. And when I started to do that, I wanted to continue to incorporate service learning and student philanthropy. So Megan, on the other hand, had done it for a long time. So we decided it would be a good opportunity to get together And we approach this as a service learning activity. So there's very little research on what we called it e-student philanthropy, but there's quite a bit of literature on e-service learning. So we borrowed from that literature in terms of how we would, the types of research questions in our approach. I will say the term that we use is extreme student philanthropy, which is based on the literature. That could mean all kinds of things, but what it means is that both components are done online, both the instruction and the philanthropy portion are done online. So we're asking questions, typical questions, that are asked with these studies, but again, for online students. To what degree did it impact their learning, their awareness of problems, and, their interest in trying to make a difference in the world? Here's a theoretical framework I'll say that we based it on. I just want to point out this is service learning. It tends to look at these approaches in silos in terms of students as learners, students as community members, students as social activists. In our article, we took a more dynamic approach to that based on our own experiences, in that oftentimes when I'm teaching a class, it's not just one approach that I'm taking, but multiple types of approaches, especially depending on the class that I'm teaching. So anyhow, I'll leave it at that. But again, there's more in the journal article if you're interested in it. But I will say I was particularly happy with this contribution in terms of our article. So for our data, it was one of my classes, Leading in Diverse Public Environments, 18 students. Megan had 3 sections of teamwork and organizations from various semesters. And we actually had a control group because Megan had an in-person class that did student philanthropy as well. So I will just hit the highlights here, showing a few tables. We looked at comparisons, undergraduate students to graduate students, but I feel like what's most interesting to people that are participating in this webinar is online and face-to-face. And frankly, just the column itself of relatively high numbers. So just to mention this, this is a 5-point scale, so 1 to 5, with 5 being very positive. So for students that were participating in e-student philanthropy, on these learning measures, it was tended to be positive or very positive. And in addition, I'll point out that they weren't statistically different or significantly different in terms of online and face-to-face. So that's an encouraging thing, in that we can do this in an online format like we do in a face-to-face format and have similar outcomes. But just looking at the numbers, they were, while they're not statistically significant, they are, appear to be relatively higher. Students as community members, again, on a scale of 1 to 5. So these are relatively high in terms of their awareness of nonprofit organizations, especially in needs in their community. Again, no significant difference between online and face-to-face. These measures as students as activists. So this is them taking action, sparking action, trying to make a difference in the world. Also relatively high, maybe not as high as the previous 2 tables, but relatively high, and no significant difference between online and face-to-face. And I pulled some qualitative data too. I know I'm at my stopping point, but I will say just to wrap this up, I wasn't sure how I would do personally as a faculty member teaching student philanthropy in an online class. It worked out really well. And I'm happy to have participated in this study to kind of look at it a little bit bigger picture. Maybe we need to do it again, Megan, with even more online classes to see where we are now. But the data was from 2017, 2018. So of course, we've seen online classes kind of blow up since then. So I'm sure there is a lot more data available. So that is all. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I know we kind of hit the end point of this session, but if folks have questions, I think we have a little time. Please, Kaisa or someone else, stop me if we don't. Okay, so I suppose, is there anything the panelists, I think we have a few minutes till the next session begins. Um, I feel like we downloaded a lot in, in terms of the research that we've done and what we're doing at our universities. But any other last minute thoughts that you had before we end this session? I'll just say I really did appreciate having you, Whitney, and you, David, join us today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedules. I know you're busy, but it has been incredibly enriching and inspiring, again, to see that this is happening in other universities and seems to be growing. And so it's been a joy to have you here and talk about your work at Chapman and Binghamton, respectively.
Julie, may I say something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I would love at some point, if possible, just to be in more conversation with folks at Northern Kentucky and others who do this, just about, all the research that you showed was about goals, about civic engagement. And I would love to talk more or be in conversation about the things that my research led me to sort of think about. What's the way that you organize these classes so that it's really about students and not about others, how they assess others as philanthropists. And that's really the conversation I want to have, because for me, my classes are really about educating students for citizenship, to use the campus compact language, and how do I organize my classes so that the students can offload critiques of philanthropists and let themselves off the hook. I want them really to sort of think about what's their responsibility to their community, and that's what the conversation I'd love to talk with other people who are teaching these classes about.
I think that's really interesting, and I was glad to hear you speak to that again today, because I do think in our general population, even when you talk about or hear the word philanthropists, we do tend to go to the Gates and, the big donors. But I think what is, and I know it was the purpose here, but just, this idea of philanthropy being love of humankind. And what are ways that we as individuals, as students, as faculty, as community members can contribute? And it's not just about money. That's the other thing. We hear philanthropy and we think the big donors and we think money, but it's time, talent, and treasure. And so I think it's kind of I think greater awareness campaign or educational campaign too, that maybe student philanthropy programs across the country could help engage in and change sort of the narrative on philanthropy. Megan and Whitney, are you in with us if we go down this road?
We're in for sure. I think that we, especially as a little baby program, we're always looking for ways to sort of engage in not only the teaching, but also sort of in the ways in which that we bring in what giving looks like too. So, although I will say, if there are any of those folks who are Gates level out there who want to sponsor a little program that could in Southern California, we'd be happy to talk with you for sure. But as we're working on the student side, we'll take some of the not so student side too. But I think it'd be really important for us. And I know there's other folks doing this work that aren't here on this call that really could contribute a lot to our thinking about the learning piece, but then also sort of how we might engage in more sort of connected research together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sounds good. Well, thanks again. And I think we have officially reached our time limit. So this has been great and really enjoyed it, and great seeing both of you again.
Thank you all.
I'll be hanging on. We're hanging on for a little bit, but you all have to go. Have a great afternoon and evening and late morning in California.
Yeah, it's still not even lunchtime here. All right.
Thanks
you all.
Thanks for the wonderful research panel. And I just wanted to mention that we added a link in the chat to the resource hub that we have here on philanthropy. And on that page, there is a link with all the citations and references for the different academic articles that have been published about philanthropy. If there's one that we missed, please let us know via email, mspp@nku.edu. All right. Well, we are moving on to almost the end of our webinar, but without further ado, I'd like to welcome Andy Bronsman to our webinar conversation. Andy is the Executive Director of Be Concerned, the nonprofit that partnered with us over several semesters, but including the class that I mentioned taught by Dr. Downing, the honors class. Welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaiser. Appreciate it. Student philanthropy is such a important thing. As Kaiser said, my name is Andy Brunsman. For the last almost 11 years, I've had the privilege of being the executive director for Be Concerned Incorporated. But my very first nonprofit job was actually at our Daily Bread, a soup kitchen over the Rhine, which I came off their 2008 Mayerson Student Philanthropy funding, which provided some murals and beautification work. So actually in 2009, when I started down there, it was actually on the tail end of Mayerson funding. I appreciate all of the professors, all the educators, and all the students that take part in student philanthropy. It's extremely important, not just from the money that it generates to the charities like Be Concerned, but in the role that you allow folks like me and other executive directors and operations people in our charitable sector to lead as co-educators. One of the things I knew as a student is that there were other things I needed to learn about the world around me and how people in maybe situations not similar to mine, how do people grow and thrive? And one of the things I love about student philanthropy and working with the students is the role of being a co-educator in these life things that are really going on in our communities, whether they are opiate-based things that have caused folks' lives to go kind of out of control, whether it's the constant need of older school charities like food pantries where our needs are kind of always going to be constant. But at the end of the day, it's great to work with some of the finest minds that are coming out of our education system because I know a lot about our charity world, but you guys know a lot about everything else that's modern day and cutting edge. So what I found through student philanthropy and working with NKU and other Mayerson projects is the fact that you guys are the greatest minds coming out of the education system, and that's one of the greatest benefits that the charitable sector needs on top of the money that we do get. One of the other reasons to love it is you guys have great ideas, and as a nonprofit guy, sitting with people that have innovative ideas and thoughts, but also the willingness to ask why. Asking why Be Concerned needed more food last year, asking why we need ethnic hair care products, understanding that different charities have different needs, and then also understanding the business end. You've heard people talk about overhead, you've heard people talk about administration, but I love that student philanthropy educates the students not only on their opportunity to give financially, but on the business aspect of which charities run. Understanding a 990 and financial statements are important, very important for future board service, also donor potential. But at the end of the day, those are some of the skills that even I don't have. And student philanthropy always is wonderful for me by planting a seed in with all the students of that. As I say all the time, the 501c3 is a tax status, not a business model. And that it's students like you guys that come professionals in all different lines of work, nonprofit, law, business, sales, administration, that you guys are the ones that really run the nonprofits. Guys like me are just the ones that get paid and have the blessing to come do things like this. But that planting that seed, that nurturing that seed and encouraging people to go out and do more is one of the things that I have found the most innovative with student philanthropy. When you tie that outside of just the money, right, the money's great. It allows places like Be Concerned that are a small charity to stay extremely nimble, to get some unrestricted funding when we need it, and to meet our community where we are, which is a lot of our small nonprofit goals. At the end of the day, I've been part of student philanthropy for no less than 12 years. And at the end of the day, student philanthropy's always come in at a time where the agencies need it, and oftentimes, in Be Concerned's sake, to do something we'd otherwise have to say no if we didn't work with students like you and professors like your team that are willing to find a way to the yes. At the end of the day, student philanthropy is a great business model. It helps people develop more job skills. I deem it to be something that's also on the career and experiential learning side of learning as well. And at the end of the day, it is a great way for students and educators to continue the model they've done for years of doing more, for more, with more. And at the end of the day, that means guys like me and the girls and guys on our team at the food pantry and other charities are able to meet our customers where we need them and to do more for them on your guys' behalf. So at the end of the day, always think about how you can help charities just like everything you've learned. But student philanthropy is wonderful not only from the business end and the charitable end, but the fact that it's teaching you guys about the real world that's out there and also opportunities for how you can make this world what you want it to be. Gandhi's one of my favorite quotes of all time, but be the change you want to see in the world around you. And for me, that is what student philanthropy through Mayerson has always led, which is being that change we want to see and giving you guys the voice to change what you want to. So thank you guys for having me today. It's been a wonderful program. Guys, I'm going to turn it back over to you. But thank you.
Thank you so very much. Well, this wraps up our webinar. But before we go, I'd like to invite you to stay and hang out, offer some comments, ask questions. And the reason why, as we all know, that reflection is an important part of service learning. So this is our chance to reflect. So we will be hanging out for about 15 minutes or so, or longer as needed. So we look forward to meeting you on the chat. Thanks.
Want to stay up there?
Hi, Amanda. I didn't get to be in a small group with you. I'm wondering where, I'm Gail Hillicky. I'm at NKU. Where are you at?
I'm at NKU as well.
Are you?
Sorry, I had to step out for a meeting right at the time the breakout room started. I hated that, but I'm glad I
No
was able to come
problem.
back.
I'm so glad to meet you.
Sociology. Nice to meet you as well. I'm in sociology, anthropology, and philosophy, specifically sociology.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have to say, I just want to say, I didn't get a chance to talk to David because we've used up all of our time in our panel, but just throughout the day, I've really enjoyed being part of this. I should have been grading part of this day, but I devoted my whole time to this because no matter how long you've been teaching with this unique pedagogical approach to, weaving in this learning by giving, um, every time that we get together, with people that are like-minded, and you hear about their experiences, like I've jotted so many notes from things that John said, and I've been in multiple meetings with John every year or every semester. We have kickoff meetings, but I've learned more about his approach through this experience, and I'm going to seek him out because I teach first year's honors classes, and I have to work in a lot of writing things, and so I'm going to be able to draw from his experiences. And then I learned from David on our panel about some additional readings that I can work into the things that I teach, but also I was interested in listening. I want to talk to him further about his research because I keep most of the details about my Mayerson project out of my syllabus on purpose because we are blinding students from, I don't want to color their perceptions before they do the pre-survey. So I'm interested in, I believe he said that he was reviewing syllabi, didn't he, Julie? So I was like, none of my additional readings are listed. It just says see Canvas for supplemental readings. And even the project, I have kind of not, I want to say boilerplate description of the fact that they know that they're going to participate, but I don't unpack that until after they've done the pre-project survey. So, just lots of things that have come up today. I've got a whole bunch of notes and things, and, I just appreciate the opportunity to engage with everybody here today and always learning, new things that I can think about and incorporate into my approach to delivering this in the classroom. So thanks, everybody.
I agree, Megan. I thought it was really helpful. And just to touch on the different areas from, I enjoyed the teaching panel. By the way, I thought that was just delivered very well. I felt like I was watching a talk show, very professionally done and conversational. But just, I work with these folks and I hear them talking about it, but it was a nice selection of different disciplines and 7-week, 16-week online, all of that. So really good overview of the various ways that faculty or future faculty, that's my thing, people who are now doctoral students and, wanting to get a professor job. I would think this webinar, I know you're recording it and breaking it up, would be very helpful to future faculty as they enter the field. But Megan, one thing, I know he did the study of syllabi. That was his first one to look at disciplines and that type of thing. I'm not sure if that was the only source of information for the second one. He might have surveyed faculty to ask about readings, but I'm going to look at that article more closely. Yeah, he was great to start that session. Just again providing that groundwork. We did a survey early on. I mean, I think it was the first one I did with the graduate students just to find out where there were student philanthropy programs. This was probably 2008. And then when his study came out about like collecting syllabi, I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? So it's just the, just learning and again, being inspired and getting new ideas about how to do this type of research in different ways.
Any additional thoughts? I'll just emphasize, I thought it was great. I think it's everybody, to Megan's point, is grading or teaching or all of that. So I know people have had to peel off for their other responsibilities, but it's great that it's recorded for those folks who had to miss part of it or couldn't be here at all.
This was a lovely introduction to all of the things Mayerson, and so I thank you for that. And I want to thank Mark for all the work that went into this process and putting this on, and even the slides in between. I know you have it all scripted, but I think we've really benefited from your vision, Mark. And so I think this is another opportunity for us to say, look at all the things you've done at NKU.
Thank you. It's in good hands. We're gonna. I think we'll say good day to everybody and I appreciate all the participation and we will have this produced and on the research hub. Just a little bit of post-production work to do, but soon enough.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kaisa. You did a great job.
Yeah,
Thank
you all.
you.
This was great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
Bye. Good to see you, Whitney.
Yes. So
Nice
good to see you.
all.
Go enjoy lunch now.
I know, right? We're still not there yet. I still got 11 minutes, so
To clock out for lunch.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, because we all clock out for lunch.
I know. Right. All right. Well, it was just great to see everybody. I know we all get so busy sometimes it's hard to even connect. So this was great for that as well. And I have to just add to everybody else. It's just very well done. Good job, everybody and production team. So thanks for that.
Definitely. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Well, to North Media.
Yeah. Thanks, North Media.
North Media.
Chris Strobel. Yeah. All righty. Bye.